The playground smelled of sun-warmed wood chips and peanut butter sandwiches. Laughter rang out until it didn't. Marcus Green had just finished refilling his son's water bottle at the park fountain when the sound hit him. A child's scream, high-pitched. Cracking. He turned and saw Isaiah, his 8-year-old son, being yanked by the arm by a white police officer. The boy's small frame was twisted. His Spider-Man backpack lay scattered on the ground, crayons bleeding across the pavement. Marcus didn't think. He just ran. "Hey, that's my kid." The cop didn't release him. Instead, he stiffened, eyes locked onto Marcus like he was a threat, not a father. "Back up, sir. Step away." Marcus's heart pounded. He kept his hands up, voice shaking. "That's my son. He didn't do anything." "Why are you grabbing him?" Isaiah whimpered. "Daddy, I was just running. I was playing freeze tag." The cop replied flatly. "He fit the description." Marcus blinked, stunned. "What? Of what? He's 8. Silence. The playground was still. Parents stopped. Pushing swings. Phones came out. And then a little voice, barely a whisper, asked the question that would tear the air wide open. "Daddy, why do they hate me?" The playground smelled of sun-warmed wood chips and peanut butter sandwiches. Laughter rang out until it didn't. Marcus Green had just finished refilling his son's water bottle at the fountain when the scream shattered the quiet. High-pitched, raw, a cry no father ignores. He turned and saw Isaiah, 8 years old, his whole world being yanked by the arm by a white police officer. The boy's Spider-Man backpack was on the ground, contents spilled, crayons, a sandwich, a half-finished comic book. Marcus ran like his life depended on it. "Hey, that's my kid." The officer didn't release him. Instead, he squared his shoulders, hand moving near his holster. "Back up, sir. Step away." Marcus's voice cracked, his hands in the air. "That's my son. He didn't do anything. He was just playing." Isaiah looked up, eyes wide and glassy. "Daddy, I was just playing freeze tag." "I didn't do anything," the cop said it flatly. "He fits the description." Marcus froze. "What description? He's 8. He has crayons in his bag and joy in his heart. What could he possibly fit?" Parents stood frozen. Phones came out, but no one moved. Then Isaiah, barely audible, whispered, "Daddy, why do they hate me?" And that was the moment something broke. Marcus Green wasn't just a father anymore. He was a man at war with a moment he had feared his entire life. Before he was a father, he was a son himself, raised in South LA, with more bruises than birthdays. Marcus learned early to avoid police, not because he was guilty, but because he existed. In his neighborhood, innocence didn't protect you. Skin defined the verdict long before a trial. He used to sleep in a bathtub some nights to avoid stray bullets coming through the windows. The state called it neglect. He called it survival. At 16, he picked up a paintbrush on a construction site and never put it down. By 22, he was building homes for others, though he'd never truly had one of his own. And then came Alicia. Her laugh? That saved him. Her love? That made him believe he could break the cycle, but hope has. A cruel sense of timing. She went into labor on a rainy Tuesday. The hospital told them to wait. She was overreacting. "It's early labor," they said. Marcus saw the panic in her eyes before the alarm started. Internal bleeding, flatline, surgery, silence. They handed him a son and told him she didn't make it. He didn't cry. Not then, he couldn't. He held Isaiah like porcelain and whispered, "I'll raise you for both of us." Their first apartment had cracks in the ceiling and a heater that coughed all winter, but Marcus made it home. Every morning started with eggs, even when he only had enough for one. Every night ended with lullabies sung off key. He worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. On weekends, they'd walk to the park and feed pigeons. Isaiah always asking questions too big for his age. One afternoon, at the grocery store, Marcus noticed a white woman pull her child closer when they passed. He looked down at Isaiah's tiny hand in his. "Did we scare her?" the boy asked. Marcus smiled, but his heart cracked. "No, baby. Some people are just confused." Isaiah's school called one day. They said he was aggressive for speaking up about a history assignment. Marcus sat through the meeting, jaw clenched. As they used coded language, disruptive, hyper, difficult, he joined the parent board. Volunteered for field trips. Brought homemade snacks to every class party. Still, other parents wouldn't meet his eyes. And now, in this park, with his son's wrist locked in the grip of authority, Marcus saw the future he'd fought so hard. To protect collapsing, the cop's voice cut through again. "Sir, back away." But Marcus didn't. He stepped forward. Not with fists, with a tremble. With the weight of generations, he said one sentence. "You picked the wrong kid." That's... When the silence in the park turned electric, a woman near the swings began filming. Her hand shook. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He's just a little boy." Marcus locked eyes with the officer. Not in rage, but in memory. They knew each other. His name was Officer Dean, same guy who used to chase Marcus out of convenience stores as a teen. Same guy who once called him boy outside a liquor store when Marcus was 14, Dean recognized. Him too. Second officer arrived, younger, hesitant. He glanced down at Isaiah's scraped knees and coloring books on the ground. Something softened in his stance. "Let the kid go," he said quietly, but Dean didn't, not yet. Isaiah's voice broke the tension. "Please don't hurt my daddy." Marcus fell to one knee, not in surrender, but to hold his son's eye level. "I'm here, I got you." The grip loosened. Dean finally stepped back. Muttered something about misunderstanding, but the damage was done. Marcus scooped Isaiah into his arms. Held him tighter than ever. Cameras were rolling. The park was buzzing. Someone shouted, "He should be arrested!" The video hit Twitter within an hour, then TikTok. Then CNN. Let him go trended by sunset. Marcus was invited to speak at the city council. His voice cracked as he told the story not for himself, but for fathers who never got their kids back. Dean was placed under investigation, quietly, internally. You know how those things go, but the next weekend, Marcus brought Isaiah back to the same park, and something small had shifted. A white father nodded at him from the sandbox. A black grandmother offered a knowing look. No one looked away. Isaiah ran to the swings. Marcus sat on the bench, hands open, eyes on his boy, heart still. Sore but standing, he never wanted fame. He wanted a Saturday where no one saw his son as a threat. And in that park, for the first time in a long time, he exhaled. Maybe we all have a choice. Look down, walk away, or stand up. Marcus Green didn't raise his voice for glory. He stood. Tall for the future, he was building one scraped knee, one peanut butter sandwich, one swing at a time. He never wanted a medal. Just a name they wouldn't fear, and for one moment, he became something more than a father. He became the line they couldn't cross again. The first year, alone nearly broke him. Marcus would rock Isaiah in one arm while mixing drywall paste with the other. He learned to warm bottles by wrapping them in a sock and tucking them near the heater vent. He gave up beer, sleep, and even birthdays. Every night after work, he'd lay on the floor next to Isaiah's crib and whisper stories, made up tales about superheroes who wore hard hats and saved homes instead of cities. One night, Isaiah grabbed his finger and refused to let go. Marcus didn't pull away. He just whispered, "It's just me and you now, kid. We're gonna be okay." He didn't always believe it, but he said it anyway. He skipped meals so Isaiah wouldn't notice. When groceries ran low. When Isaiah got a fever, Marcus used a borrowed thermometer and held him all night, terrified. He couldn't afford a hospital visit, and he sure as hell couldn't afford to lose him too. Their apartment had roaches. The heat barely worked. The landlord avoided calls. Still, every Sunday, Marcus made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Isaiah would giggle and pretend to be a T-Rex, syrup on his chin. For those 5 minutes, life was good. For those 5 minutes, Marcus felt like he was enough, but deep down, he knew the world didn't see them the same way he did, and the older Isaiah got, the more that truth started to surface. It started small, a white woman crossing the street. When they approached, a store clerk following them down the cereal aisle, Marcus would kneel beside Isaiah and whisper, "It's not your fault. You're perfect, don't let them shrink you." But how do you armor a child against an enemy that wears a smile and a badge? The school meetings started by third grade. Isaiah talks too much in class. He gets distracted. He challenged. A lesson on Rosa Parks? Marcus would nod, listen, then walk out boiling. Challenge meant corrected. Isaiah wasn't loud. He was curious, bold, but they didn't want bold. They wanted quiet. He started volunteering at the school. Showed up to PTA meetings. Helped repaint the playground on weekends. He thought maybe, just maybe, they'd stop seeing him as a problem, but parents still held their purses tighter. Teachers still looked past him when asking for volunteers. He smiled less. Watched. More. Observed how the world shrunk his son a little more each year. One day, Isaiah came home crying because a teacher asked if he was on medication. His crime? Finishing his math worksheet too fast and helping a classmate. Marcus lost it. He marched to the principal's office and demanded answers. He didn't yell. He didn't cuss. But he was firm. The principal, a thin white man with glasses and a plastic smile, leaned back and said, "We're just trying to make sure your son is manageable." That word stayed with him, manageable, as if Isaiah were a storm they needed to contain. Not a child they needed to nurture, but what broke Marcus more than anything was this. Isaiah started to believe them. He began asking, "Why don't the teachers like me?" Or, "Am I bad, Dad?" Every time, Marcus would take his face in both hands and say, "You are not bad. You are bright. You are brave." Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out, that soon Isaiah wouldn't just be seen as difficult, he'd be seen as dangerous. That fear haunted him every time they stepped outside. And then came that Sunday. Jefferson Park. It was supposed to be a good day. A normal day. The sun was out. Marcus had the day off. He packed juice boxes, apples, and Isaiah's favorite comic book. They played tag. They raced to the slides. Marcus even laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. Then, in a single moment, it all flipped. Isaiah had been playing freeze tag with other kids, darting across the grass. Another boy tripped, cried, pointed. A white officer on patrol stepped in without asking questions. He saw Isaiah, brown-skinned, fast, loud, and move fast. The grip. The scream. The terror. Marcus reacted on instinct. A father's instinct. But what came next wasn't just a confrontation. It was history catching up with him. And then, something he never expected. The cop dragging Isaiah. Marcus recognized him. Dean. He used to patrol Marcus's old neighborhood. Back when Marcus was just another black teen trying to get home without a problem, he once slammed Marcus against a brick wall for skateboarding too fast. "Should have locked you up then." Dean had muttered that night. Now he had his son. The universe has a cruel sense of repetition. Marcus didn't lunge. Didn't yell. He walked slowly, intentionally, hands in the air. He said, clear as day, "You picked the wrong kid." Phones came out, recording, whispering. And still, Isaiah cried, "Don't hurt my daddy." That voice, that tiny voice, stopped the second officer in his tracks. He looked at Isaiah. At the spilled backpack. At the scraped knees. He said softly, "Let him go." Dean hesitated, but the cameras were rolling. People were filming. And even rage knows when it's outnumbered. He let go. Isaiah collapsed into Marcus's arms, sobbing. Marcus held him. Not like a shield, like a home. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. The crowd began to stir. One woman shouted, "He should be arrested." Another began to cry. The story was already online. By evening, Marcus's face was on every screen, not as a suspect. As a father. The video trended. Millions watched. Some called him a hero. Some said he overreacted, but all Marcus cared about was the boy asleep in his arms that night, his face still damp with tears, but breathing easy. The next day, the mayor called. Reporters knocked. Marcus didn't want a platform, but he took it. He spoke softly at City Hall, voice cracking, hands shaking. "My son was just playing tag." The officer was suspended pending review, quietly, internally. Marcus didn't expect justice. He'd stopped believing in it years ago, but something strange happened. When he returned to Jefferson Park the next weekend, people looked at him differently. Not with fear, with recognition. With respect. A white father at the monkey bars nodded. A black grandmother squeezed his hand. Isaiah ran to the swings, laughed, and Marcus sat on the bench, hands finally still, eyes locked on his boy, and whispered, "We made it." Maybe not to justice, but to the next morning, to hope. And sometimes that's enough. Maybe we all have a choice, to kneel, to walk away, or to stand for the ones we love. Marcus Green didn't come to the park seeking justice. He came to push his son on the swings, to feel the sun on his back and hear his boy laugh without fear. But when history grabbed Isaiah by the wrist, Marcus didn't raise his voice to start a revolution. He raised it because he refused to let the world define his son by anything other than love. He didn't ask for headlines. He didn't need applause. All he wanted was for his son to make it home. And in that moment, raw, terrifying, and painfully familiar, he became more than a single dad. He became the man who stood between his child and a legacy of silence. He never wanted a medal, just a name they wouldn't fear, and a world where his son could grow up unshaken, because sometimes love is louder than justice. It was raining the night Isaiah was born. Not a soft drizzle, but one of those stubborn downpours that made the city feel like it was grieving something unseen. Marcus had run every red light in South Baltimore to get to the hospital. His hands trembled on the wheel, not from fear, but from awe. For the first time in his life, he felt like the world was about to give him something instead of taking it away. In the hospital room, he stood beside Isaiah's mother, her breaths ragged, knuckles white from gripping the bed rail. She looked at him with a fierce, unspoken question in her eyes. "Will you stay?" And Marcus, without flinching, nodded. He didn't have the words, but in that moment, he made a vow, not just to her, not just to the child crying into fluorescent lights, but to the universe itself, that no matter what this country threw at them, he would never let his son face it alone. When the nurse placed Isaiah in his arms, Marcus felt a silence fall over him, not the absence of sound, but the overwhelming hush that comes when your heart realizes it has found its reason. Isaiah's tiny fingers closed around one of his. "I got you," Marcus whispered, the same 3 words he'd whisper again years later. When those police hands tried to rewrite that promise, the video didn't last more than 22 seconds, a shaky phone, a screaming boy, a dad running, a cop grabbing. Too hard, and the scream that seemed to split the sky in half. By the end of the night, it had 2.7 million views. By morning, it was on the news, but what none of those viewers saw was the moment just after the phone cut off, the way Isaiah clung to his dad like he was the only solid ground in a world made of quicksand. They didn't see the way Marcus wrapped his arms around him, whispering, "You're safe now, you're safe." The public saw the pain, they missed the healing, and for Marcus, that was always the tragedy of being a black father in America. They see your rage, they ignore your love. Marcus stood at the front of the room, palms sweaty against the podium. He didn't like cameras, didn't trust microphones, but tonight he wasn't speaking for the internet. He was speaking for every father who had to teach their kid what to do and not if a cop pulled them aside. 3 weeks ago, he said, my son was yanked out of a childhood moment and thrown into a generational trauma. Murmurs rippled through the room. He continued, voice steady. I'm not here to call for war. I'm not here to burn anything down. I'm here to ask why my 8-year-old was seen as a threat instead of a child on a swing. Silence. My son is not your suspect. A pause. Then, my son is not your suspect. He's a kid. And he deserves the same innocence, the same joy, the same safety you expect for yours. A woman in the back wiped a tear. That night, Marcus didn't go viral again, but he planted something deeper than a trending hashtag. He planted the seed of understanding.